Hey everybody, Antoni here. Last night was an amazing evening for opera, not just for me, but also for my two friends Beata and Stefan. And the opera that we saw last night at the Deutsche Oper Berlin was none other than one of Puccini's most well known works, Tosca. And as always, for this review, I have this little program with me so that just in case I forget any names or screw up with pronunciation, I have this as my guide. The conductor was someone I've never really heard of before, by the name of Matthias Fohemny. The production was by Boleslav Barlog. The stage design and costumes were by Filippo Sanyos. The chorus master was Thomas Richter, and the children's chorus master was Christian Lindhorst. Now, the thing about Tosca that I really, really love, just like every other opera fan, is its music. Oh, sure, the plot is basically the villain baritone lusts after the heroine soprano, namely Scarpia and Tosca, respectively, and he wants to have the tenor hero Cavaradossi dead. The soprano heroine Tosca kills off Scarpia. However, Cavaradossi is shot, and the soprano Tosca kills herself. Wow. Yeah, it is really a tragic opera. But what do you expect? A lot of these type of operas are really tragic. Doesn't matter if it's Verissimo or Verdi or bel canto operas. But going back to what I love about Tosca, it really is the music that is the money spot for me. From Cavaradossi's E lucevan le stelle and Recondita Armonia to Scarpia's Te Deum, and from Tosca's Vici d'arte, which is a very well known aria sung by a lot of spinto and dramatic sopranos. However, my most favorite scene in all of Tosca really has to be the murder scene. Um, Scarpia's murder, yeah, specifically. This scene, if done well by any soprano that sings Tosca and any baritone that sings Scarpia, will become very memorable if it's done well, like I said. And it'll actually become quite bone chilling because, yeah, it's almost quite rare to have the soprano kill off the baritone, but it really shows you just how strong of a character Tosca is and how she can go out of her way to save the one she really loves. And it really also shows how much courage she has and just to just to do something like that. So, yeah, that for me is the most memorable scene in Tosca and one that I actually am very addicted to. So, let's move on to the production. Now, I'll go through these act by act in terms of the set design. The first act, well, was set in a chapel. All I have to say is that I really liked it. I really did. I mean, it was vivid. It was just gorgeous. It made me just really want to go inside the chapel itself. Everything about the interiors were worth looking at, especially that of the Madonna statue. And that's all I can say. It was just pure gorgeousness. However, in the second act, I thought it was kind of weak. I kind of expected a little bit more in terms of how Scarpia's office would look like because it just consisted of this: a huge painting on the left, a small chapel on the right, two doors, like one on the left and the other in the north, Scarpia's writing table in the left, and two huge windows on the left. And they're all surrounded by one huge gray wall. I honestly thought to myself, this could have looked better. I was expecting a lot more luxury, like, why not have a little bit of red, some purple, or some gold? Why settle for gray? It just didn't make sense for me. But I have to say, red, purple, and gold would have been a lot better. Those color choices could have been 10 times better. And maybe a little bit more paintings and a little bit more luxurious interior designs would have made Scarface Office look a lot better. But as it is, it was just kind of weak. And now we move on to the third act, where I have to say was pure eye candy. I mean, the fact that the people behind the production went out of the way to make the dawn sky look really, really lifelike was just astonishing. Well, since this is also set in a tower, I mean, it made me feel like I was on the mountains, and it made me feel like just exhilarated. It made me feel really exhilarated just seeing that. And by the time the curtains opened in the third act, my jaw automatically dropped. That is just how gorgeous the third act really, really was. So, overall, the production was really good. Sure, the second act was quite weak. Yeah, it was quite weak. But the third act really made up for it. It was that great. And now let's move on to the singers. In the title role of Floria Tosca, we have Russian soprano Tatiana Seryan. She basically specializes in a lot of roles in the Italian repertoire, specifically spinto and dramatic soprano roles, whether they're from Verdi or Puccini, but mostly from Verdi, as to the best of my knowledge, is concerned. Yeah, mostly from Verdi. Seeing her as Tosca last night was just astounding. And this is coming from someone who only heard her and only seen her pictures in passing and while surfing the web. But like I said, having her as Tosca was just astounding. It was very, very, very great. And the quality, the timbre of her voice was very steely, almost sounding like that of a mezzo. In fact, whenever I heard her sing, I automatically think, she almost sounds a little bit like Walter Meyer. Well, I guess it's just mostly because of the steely quality that she has in her voice. It does sound like a mezzo. And Beata told me that the thing that Beata really loved about her voice is that, as she stated to me, is that it sounded like ripe cherries, and I could not agree more. Miss Sarian was a vocal powerhouse in the role of Tosca. Sure, there were times that the orchestra kind of drowned her, but she was able to make up for it in terms of her acting. And I have to say, Miss Sarian was very captivating as an actress. I mean, the way that she came in the first act, acting all coy and coquettish, and to Cavaradossi, and the way she acted all jealous, even throwing the fan of the Marquesa, that is just pure, pure awesomeness. And in the second act, now this is where Miss Serian shone, specifically in her aria Visi d'arte, and of course, my personal favorite scene, Scarpia's murder. Now in Visi d'arte, she started off a little bit pianissimo, but then she got on her knees in the perché signor line, and I was like, wow, that is just gorgeous. I mean, she put a lot of soul and heart into this role that she was Tosca. Not to mention, she looked really, really beautiful. And speaking of which, her murder scene was just amazing. It was bar none amazing. It didn't show Tosca being all like, ho ho ho, guess what, Scarpia, I've just owned you. But there was a lot more than that. Miss Syrian was able to show Tosca as being a little bit vulnerable, desperate, and very emotional in this scene, but mostly desperate. I could see the desperation in her eyes and in her face and her facial expressions. Even when she plunges the knife to Scarpia, she does feel like, yes, I know I'm doing this for Cavaradossi, for my love Mario, but if they find out, if the police find out, I'll get caught. I might get hanged. My reputation will be ruined. She knows that she wants to save him, but she knows that her own life will be on the line. And that is just amazing of what Miss Sarian did. I don't know if the stage manager told her to do that, but this was absolutely amazing. And it really shows that Miss Sarian is not only a wonderful singer, but also an equally great actress who can pour out a lot of emotion, a lot of heart and soul into this role. And it really shows you just how challenging Tosca can be for any soprano. I mean, she not only has to have a magnificent, big sounding voice, but also she's got to have amazing acting skills. She's got to have some acting chops to go along with those florid lines and those high notes, low notes, you name it. And Miss Sarian shone brightly. And then we have the Cavaradossi for that evening, who was Marcello Giordani. I've actually heard him on YouTube, and he sounded really, really good. And having him as Cavaradossi, he was just astounding, just excellent. Um, Andrew Harris, who sang Sharone in this production of Tosca, and who I also saw um, watching La Gioconda, had amazing things to say about Mr. Giordani, and I actually agree with him. Mr. Giordani had a ferocity that he put into Cavaradossi that makes him such a youthful, passionate, young romantic. And it really shows you just how great he is as an actor. And as a singer, he was really, really great. His high notes were steady and firm, and they were also ringing, sounding like huge church bells. Yeah, I know I sounded a bit corny, but what more can I say? His high notes were just powerful. They were huge. They were blossoming. They were ringing. And his acting was just fantastic. It was very, very believable that we see a young man full of life, full of energy, and he loves Tosca with all of his soul. He's willing to give his life for her. And when he knows that he's about to die, we can't help but feel sorry for him because well, he didn't do anything wrong. He was just involved in this circumstance and this is what he got himself into. So yeah, I really felt the sadness when Mr. Giordani sang E lucevan le stelle. That was just heavenly. It was just heavenly, especially when he sang Recondita Armonia. So, a huge kudos to Mr. Giordani for making such a powerful, powerful Cavaradossi. I mean, his efforts in that role were just amazing. Most mostly because of his great sounding voice that had great technique, great sound, and I didn't really hear any wobbles. I didn't really hear any vocal pitfalls. So overall, it was a great success for Mr. Giordani in that role. And then we have the Scarpia for the evening, someone who I wasn't really familiar before, Sergei Murtsayev, a Russian dramatic baritone. Now, Thomas Hampson was supposed to sing the role of Scarpia for that evening, but apparently he was sick. So Mr. Mutsayev ended up taking the role of Scarpia, even though in this evening he had a little bit of a cold. Well, all I can say is that he was in tip top form. I mean, despite having a cold, I mean, that's just amazing. I mean, his voice was virile, it was round, it was rich, it was incisive, it was like metal, it was a metallic, rich sounding baritone voice that is a huge um, feast to my ears. And every note that he sang was on tune. It was powerful. It was just amazing. It was full of emotion. It was full of life. It was full of character. It was full of just wow. Wow. I mean, Escarpia, he had this dark quality to his voice that he put on. And in acting wise, he really knew that less is more. So yeah, he didn't play up Scarpia's evil nature. I mean, he didn't go over the top with it. He basically kept it to a minimum. But what I do see in Murtsayev's Scarpia is that he's a cold-hearted snake who doesn't really give a crap for others and who's also quite the hypocrite in terms of his faith in God. So yeah, and his death scene was just great. It was pretty good. And even though he had a cold at that time, it really shows me just how amazing Murtsayev was, not just as a singer, but also as an actor. So, overall, a huge kudos to Mr. Murtsayev for making such a great Scarpia. Even though he had a cold, he went on strong, and it really shows. And then in the minor roles, we have Ben Wager as Angelotti. I will say this about Mr. Wager. Okay, so I saw him as Lodovico in Othello, and here he is now in Tosca as Angelotti, so here it goes. Um, he had such a magnificent presence on stage. And his voice, as usual, had this round, rich quality, and he puts it to really great use. And he was also quite athletic. I mean, running around here and there in the church, and he really um, made Angelotti someone we can root for. I mean, yeah, Angelotti is really desperate because let's face it, he was a political prisoner and he got himself into some trouble with Scarpia, even though he didn't really do anything wrong. So, Mr. Wager did an amazing job, both vocally and dramatically, in such a small role, and he used that round, rich, creamy basso voice to such great advantage. So, a huge kudos to him. And then in the sacristan, we have Seth Carrico, who I really love him in this role. I have to say, he kind of downplays the sacristan's goofiness, and he kind of made him a little bit more serious, but I guess that's quite the principle. less truly is more when it comes to playing these type of characters, whether they're comical or villainous. And he really knew when less is more. So vocally, he was amazing. I mean, he was very well focused all throughout the registers, and there were no signs of wobbles, there were no signs of pitfalls. It was a nice, even tone to his voice. And it didn't really sound like the usual comic basso buffos. It sounded more like a basso cantante. And like I said, Mr. Carrico was absolutely great in this small yet really, really fun little role. And then we have the Charones sung by my dear friend Andrew Harris. I have to say, even though this role was very thankless and very small, Mr. Harris made great use of this role with his stentorian, um, metallic sounding basso baritone voice. He was able to paint such a powerful picture of this underling of Scarpia, one of Scarpia's underlings, so to say. I mean, he's a lot more serious than Spoletta. I mean, his little bouts with Spoletta really make him that intimidating. I mean, make Sharona really that intimidating. I mean, it really shows you that, you know what? You better be careful that you won't mess with Sharona. Otherwise, it's gonna be your head. Yeah, that's just how amazing Mr. Harris is as an actor, and I really applaud Andrew in this role. I mean, he was magnificent. Despite this role being thankless and small, he still was great. And then in the role of Spoletta, we have Jörg Schöne, who I really thought was great in this role. I mean, he had such a lyrical, lovely sounding voice that he puts it to great use. Um, and he also plays Spoletta's sliminess quite well. I mean, he's trying to make Scarpia happy, trying to prove to Scarpia that he is that reliable as his underling, and it just really shows that Mr. Shona really does a great job in this role, and I really applaud him for that. And then in the role of the jailer, we have Noel Bowley, really great voice and really great presence. And then in the role of the shepherd, we have Max Schirmacher, a really great voice, even though it was almost a little bit inaudible on stage. Well, what do you expect? The shepherd is an offstage role. So overall, all of the singers did an amazing job and they made great use of their instruments. So a huge kudos to all of them. Overall, what more can I say about last night's production of Tosca? It was that amazing. It was really fun, and I really have to thank Beata for um, purchasing drinks on the house for me and Stefan. I'm very thankful for her, and I'm very thankful for the conductor, especially Mr. Poemni, uh, who conducted the orchestra really well. Oh, sure, there are times that the orchestra overpowered some of the singers, but it really kept with the mood of what Tosca is as an opera, and especially in the powerful moments. I mean, it really shows just how amazing this opera is. And also the chorus. I mean, the chorus was just also amazing as well. So overall, this is really, really up there with La Gioconda being my most favorite opera production so far at the Deutsche Oper Berlin. So That's actually three opera productions that I really love at the Deutsche Oper Berlin. I had Don Carlo, I had La Gioconda, and now I have Puccini's Tosca being one of my most favorite opera productions done at the Deutsche Oper Berlin. Sure, I could easily forgive that little shortcoming at the second act. So overall, it was a wonderful evening at the Deutsche Oper Berlin with great singing, an equally great production, a great orchestra, great opera chorus, and a great conductor. So a huge kudos and congratulations to all of them. Well, I hope you all enjoyed this review of Puccini's Tosca, shown at the Deutsche Oper Berlin. If you have any feedback, well, drop a comment right there. And if you're new to this channel, then welcome to my channel. And I hope to see you all later. Take care.